Eric, Sangram, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. Super excited to have you both on the program. Why don't we start with intro? Sangram, get us started.
All right. I think someone introduced me a long time ago in 3 acronyms, so I'm going to just steal that and keep going with that. I run marketing at Pardot and got acquired by ExactTarget and Salesforce. So MA is the first acronym. Then ended up writing a couple of books on ABM, built Terminus, had an exit in a private equity firm. So that's ABM. And now I do all things go-to-market. So GTM is where you could really talk. So MA, ABM, GTM. Along the way, I think the last book we wrote, Move, became a Wall Street Journal bestseller around go-to-market, which has really thrust us into being a student of go-to-market. There's just so many things that people talk about it. And we believe that we're just learning every single day.
I love that. A collection of acronyms and being a student of the discipline. Yeah. Eric, I'll flip that over to you in case somebody out there who still doesn't know who you are. I think we've done a good job making sure everybody knows.
I'm sure there's plenty of them. Thanks for having me. Eric Westerkamp. I'm the CEO here at CaliberMind. I've been doing SaaS and SaaS startups or SaaS related companies, God, for I don't even want to say how many years here. I started my first company many years ago as one of the original Java-based, document management organizations. We sold that. I've been working in the business now for 20 plus years.
Fantastic. So I feel like today's topic of go-to-market is definitely relevant for both of you. And Sangram, I want to start with you. So you wrote this book, Move. You wrote it a few years ago, but for me, over the last 2 years, that actually was one of the better business books that I've read.
Thank you.
It was actionable. I have a lot of writings on all the margins. That's how I read books. I would not be able to pass it on, so I have to keep them. I have a good collection. So the framework that you presented in this book, share with the audience, what is that framework? And then another question is, with all of the recent change that we've had, is this framework still relevant today?
Oh my gosh. I think, as you said, it's like 4 years ago. I think we get to say that we talked about go-to-market before go-to-market was cool, because this is like a 2021 book, Move. And funny enough, we sell more copies of the book now than we actually did in 2021. So my publisher is very happy on this. And MOVE is an acronym. It stands for Market, Operation, Velocity, and Expansion. And these 4 questions, no matter what stage of the business you're in the book, we go through, as you know, Nadia, around companies move through problem market fit, product market fit, and platform market fit. And Eric, with your experience of 20 plus years, you probably have seen all of these 3 stages. And as companies mature and slide back and move forward or just evaporate. And what we found out in our research for this book was every company has to answer these 4 questions. Now, the questions remain the same, but the answers could be different based on the stage of the business you're in. So market is really, well, who should we market to is really important question. Most people spend the least amount of time in it. It's crazy because this should be the most important question to ask. But I remember a rep we had, at Terminus, he sold one deal in healthcare. And then he came to the next executive meeting and said, healthcare is our target. Like, we need to go all in on healthcare because it was a really big deal. And we're like, well, can you sell one more before we make that an official declaration and change our website to it? So stuff like this happens all the time where we keep moving. Who do we target and who's the best ICP for us? The operations is the core of it. The analytics around it, how do you create proper dashboard that can give you the right information so you can make business decisions? Too often people stay in a marketing dashboard or sales dashboard, but not actual go-to-market dashboard. The velocity is how fast can the company move, not just from a pipeline to close ratio, but how quickly can we ramp people is a very important metric as you scale businesses. So that's what velocity is all about. And then the last one is the most interesting one. E initially was experience. And then as we interviewed Jeffrey Moore, who wrote Crossing the Chasm, and Scott Dorsey, who was the CEO of ExactTarget, who sold to Salesforce for $2.5 billion, they both said that E needs to be about expansion. How much can you expand within the existing market with your customers is really what's going to show the growth of it, which is what gave us the whole understanding of NRR, the net revenue retention, which is really the number one metric most companies should be thinking about. So market, operation, velocity, and expansion are the four things. And the questions are more relevant now, Nadia, I believe, than ever before.
I believe you. We hear that all the time. So Eric, my next question is to you on that. So Sangram said the magic word, dashboards and analytics, the things that are at the very core of operations. And we talk with operations professionals all the time, marketing operations, revenue operations. And I feel like when it comes to data, hypothetically, it's an easy thing to solve for. You just put this number over here, that number over there, and voila, you have a dashboard, right? And these are the numbers that now guide you. In reality, we're dealing with imperfect data. We're dealing with very messy data. So what's your take on what marketing leaders that are part of the go-to-market team should be thinking about when it comes to their data strategy? I mean, data used to be popular, then it stopped being popular. Now it's popular again because it's everywhere. So how do you see that, Eric?
I'll start with marketing leaders really need to start by thinking through what are the KPIs they actually care about and that are meaningful, right? And so before you can really put together a good data strategy, you need to understand kind of what your targets are. And what I've seen a lot of organizations do is they build KPIs based upon the data they have, as opposed to building out their data infrastructure to support the KPIs they really need to run the business, right? And so you'll see this very often of, a classic example is we got a ton of people on our website and our website is going up and the traffic on our website is all going up. And so everything must be great. Well, that's an easy metric to measure. And so therefore it's probably one that's being presented, but is that metric actually meaningful? Maybe, maybe not, right? So I'd say the first thing that marketers really need to think about is what KPIs really mean something to my business. What KPIs do I need to be measuring so I know if we're actually improving? And then also, what KPIs do I need to be able to present into the rest of the organization, to be honest, so that marketing can show that they're actually succeeding in their mission of, at the end of the day, driving leads, driving pipeline, and driving revenue.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing to what Eric, you just said?
Sure.
It reminds me of a story that I often share. We were about at Terminal, my last company, we were about at, I think, 22 million in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have this meeting, the executive meeting, where we used to just have, I felt like the conversation we mostly had was who moved my cheese. Like that was literally the conversation. Like, hey, marketing is like, here's my number, and the sales is like, here's my number, and then everybody's and we're like, I'm like 40 minutes in, and I would sometimes be baffled, like, all right, can we get an adult in the room? And we were again 22 million, so it's not like people were not super smart, but the best thing that ever happened to us was we had some Melody Lee who joined us as a revenue operations person, and she walked in that meeting and she said, this was the last meeting where we're going to have this conversation. And we're like, what? She's like, yep, nobody reports on this thing anymore. I will report on this thing, and everybody come to this meeting to drive conversation around how do we make things better. And then we work collectively as an executive team. What metrics, to your point, that moves the business needle? And it changed the game, because that was a 5-minute conversation after that. And the whole rest of the 55-minute was pretty much, how do we work and act as business leaders, try to move the business forward? It was honestly a business changing decision and timing for us.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing the power of settling on a KPI or two, getting the measurement in place. And then once you have the reporting and the framework in place, the conversation around that metric really die off, because here's the metric. Everyone should see it before the meeting. And now the dialogue is like, is the metric going in the right direction and not going in the right direction? If it's moving in the right direction, why? If it's not moving in the right direction, what are we going to do about it? Right. But it moves from a very tactical discussion to a very strategic discussion.
Yeah, I'll one word. Sorry, not if you have another question, but this is just giving me like,
amazing. Keep on going.
Yeah, like this is like stories. Like all I got are like war stories and crazy things. Part of when we do a lot of advisory work, part of the worst thing that happens is that they would say, marketing, go create an ICP. And we have constantly been on this journey like, no, ICP is not a marketing job. This is where we want to focus as a company. So yes, marketing can go create a persona and a deck and provide more insight into it, but an executive team needs to work together to figure out, is this the right ICP? And I can tell you about how many times we walk in, again, 20, 30, 40, $50 million companies where there is a huge gap in the way we think, which is why we often say that one of the worst questions ever created is, where can we grow? It sounds so good. It sounds so right. And it sounds like we should be talking about that. How can we not talk about it? But a better question, our research showed, was, where can we grow the most? Is a better question. That qualifier, that intentionality creates the right kind of debate. Is there enough gross margin if we focus on this ICP? Do we have customer success team that can support this type of customer? Do we have a product and a feature set and future? Is there a point of view that brings the right kind of people? It really brings your go-to-market team together on asking and having a positive debate on it. The where can you grow question has derailed, and the ICP marketing job is ICP, sales job is pipe, has moved us into more kind of siloed than it has ever been in the name of trying to be efficient.
Is that a dig on that poor sales guy who brought healthcare in and said now it's the focus industry?
Well, sales is like really hard, right? Like sales work now, it's harder than ever to actually, you really think about it. But it keeps pushing back on this. And I think the AI, it's funny, we have like a few minutes in it, we haven't said the word that we need to say every 5 minutes.
We're trying hard not to start with AI, because everybody else will.
Yeah. But the AI part is like, the interesting thing about AI on the flip side is AI doesn't care about emotions. AI doesn't care about our little silos. AI doesn't care about our little poor this, that, and the other. So that's what I love about the interesting thing about where the future is going around it. But we'll get to it.
We'll get to it. We cannot have a podcast or a webinar without talking about AI. But you were talking about something interesting, this desire to grow. Any company with VCs behind it, PE behind it, that's the proliferating question. How can we grow? And of course, where can we grow the most? And I feel like that kind of speaks to the V in your framework, that velocity of how quickly, where do we go, right? And when I think about it, and your RevOps person story coming into the room and saying, enough child's play, we're going to be adults here, right? Reminds me of I got my props here, the kind of questioning things with an 8-ball and trying to figure out traffic sounds like a good thing, right? Shake it, yes, no, maybe so. But then you need a compass and a map. Yeah. And, we've heard our customers refer to insights that they get as a compass, helping them understand where you go. So the question is there's certain killers of velocity. My magic 8-ball is one of those killers, right? Hypothesizing, not seeing clearly. How do you think about those velocity killers? And Sangram, let's start with you, and maybe Eric, you could contribute to this.
Yeah, I'm happy to get off. I think there are a lot of false positives that are killing businesses. Eric mentioned a few, like traffic to the website is the greatest false positive one could ever create, because when you ask the next question, which nobody asks, so what? I think if anybody can take away anything from anything I say, is just take that so what and ask every single time somebody says something. And if there's no depth, you will figure out how much depth the other person has about the topic you're talking about. So if somebody says we have traffic to the website, so what? And the conversation should lead into is the traffic from the right ICP that we want to close deals that actually stay with us and create a better NRR? If nobody can answer that question, then we're not even really in the same ballpark of where we should be thinking about. So the velocity killers, there are several of the ones that I'll just point one that I've seen so badly. The ratio of pipe to close and how fast we close and how we think about it, it again sounds very much like, yeah, that's how we should be thinking about. But 10, 20 years ago, I was talking to a rep who was super successful. He said, we used to only have 1x or 2x pipe. We never had 5x pipe. If you had 5x pipe, our leaders would look at us and saying, you're not doing your job. Why do you need 5x pipe? Why are you not able to close more deals with just 1x or 2x pipe? So there was a level of expectation from both marketing and sales to create pipeline that was worthy to be called pipeline. And the false positive and the velocity is like, well, let's create more pipe and let's move more pipe quickly to it, is all false narrative. The real narrative is like, why do we even need it? What is the right match that we need to have? Is the right segment that can focus and give us that kind of results? It doesn't happen that way in most companies.
Well, those are all the hard questions to ask. It's almost like you have to have a crystal ball to know what those things are. It's much easier to keep talking about up and to the right, whatever that right might be, right? Not even knowing what your axes are. So, Eric, my next question is for you. Like, we're talking about having insights, and operating with data that informs what to do next. But in most cases, that data is siloed. In most cases, that data is imperfect. In a lot of cases, you have different levels of data literacy where two people look at the same chart and they see a completely different story. So what's your take on this operating impact of dealing with imperfect data in the world of marketing analytics, where you're trying to align people towards the common North Star?
Well, first I'll start with that. Almost all marketing data is imperfect. It's signals, right? So it's website hits, it's people showing up for a webinar, it's people clicking on ads, people downloading content, it's sales touches if you have those in your system, right? It's email responses, right? It's all kind of imperfect, and until a prospect actually signs a contract or pays for a product, all the marketing data doing is sort of giving us these signals that you're hoping you can interpret into some story that tells you whether or not you're moving in the right direction, you're making the right decisions. Because at the end of the day, the metric that, to be honest, really the only metric that really matters is revenue. And then, and then ahead of that is pipeline. But pipeline itself is still just something that tells you and gives you some confidence that maybe you're going to get the revenue. Right. So you get to the 5 times multiple. The reason they want for 5 times multiple is to basically, it's because what they're doing is the multiple is really some number they've assigned to it to help them understand how imperfect their pipeline data is.
Yeah.
Right. My pipeline data is pretty imperfect, so I need 6 times multiple.
Yeah.
We're pretty good, so I need a 2 times multiple. Right. But all that number is really telling me how imperfect that data and the information is at the sales level. Marketing is even different. Marketing is coming from much thinner, much sparser data, and they're trying to get down there. Right. So the most important thing really is that marketers start to, one, accept that their data is really imperfect. And what they're really trying to do is pull out of that. Am I moving in the right direction? Am I doing the right activities to help us drive revenue? And then what are the stories that I can extract from this data so that I can tell into the rest of the organization? Because at the end of the day, the CEO, the CFO, they're going to ask hard questions. You spent X millions of dollars on ads. What did it get us? You ran this webinar. We have an event every year, and it's one of the largest discretionary spends of the company. Is it worth us doing? And so you need to take that data and you got to build a story out of that data to show the rest of the organization that, yes, these are the right activities for us to be doing. So at the end of the day, we get to revenue.
Yeah. This reminds me of, I'll give you another story. Eric, you're making me think about all these stories as you talk through all of it. This is a story from the Pardot days, so a little bit dated in a way, but was probably the best one. We started to do every month, once a month, a session on a Friday. We'll order pizza and all that stuff. And we would essentially do a session called Show Me the Money. Famous line Eric created, Show Me the Money, Jerry Maguire style. And we brought all the salespeople. It's a Friday afternoon. And it wasn't about, oh my gosh, like, look what marketing has done. It was about show me the money. So what we did was we actually picked the last 3 or 5 deals that were closed and actually just showed the breadcrumb. Jim, you did such a great job. The deal you closed, which is super awesome. They attended the last webinar. It's super awesome that, you have been doing this. Oh, and Janet, that was great. That person, you closed that deal. They actually downloaded these three ebooks. So make sure that, this is awesome. We never, ever asked them ever after that meeting to ever promote a webinar or promote that ebook, because they all walked away every single month knowing that, oh, those assets drive revenue. Because until that point, we would go in every meeting telling them, we launched a new ebook, here's a webinar you must promote, and never ever anybody did anything with it.
Sure.
We just flipped the script and show me the money, and it was only breadcrumbs around only the closed won top deals and what they did. And I think what you're talking about is really helping getting people to realize that, all right, look, marketing's job is to drive revenue for your business, but how we tell that story, there's so much to it to that.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm gonna say the word AI now for the first time. So that exact activity is one of the reasons that we have a lot of our companies that use the buyer journeys that we pull together to do exactly that. They take those buyer journeys. We have one in particular that literally maps it out on this like kind of, almost like chutes and ladders type kind of thing here, like that, with all the touch points on it. And then they send that back into the rest of the organization. And what they're doing is, again, it gets back to they're telling a story about the data, saying like, here's a company that we sold, and for some reason we've decided this is a really good example of what we've done. And then here's all the marketing touch points and all the sales touch points and all the meetings, and here's what it took to close it. And they send that in. We built a part of our system that essentially takes those buyer journeys and it uses AI and large language models to basically build that story directly. And we now have a lot of companies that are taking the story and dropping it right onto the opportunity accounts in Salesforce specifically for that reason. So Salesforce can come in and they can be like, where are we at? Like, what's the story going on with this account? Here it is. It's all summarized, all the touch points. It's kind of been built up. And then I can have ones that we won, and they can go in and they can review that. What worked? What didn't work at this account because we won it or lost it? But it's about building those stories and placing them right on those accounts.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That's what the cool kids do. I used to call it anatomy of the buyer. And there was one slide, and you never have enough room on one slide when you draw the line and you put the dates on there. I never included the sales touch points. So that was, look how marketing helped you. Great job, right? Harder to get the buy-in, but that's what that was.
Yeah, it is absolutely so critical when you think about a single source of truth and helping companies make go-to-market decisions. That's ultimately why this phrase go-to-market is so important for people to realize. If you have a sales and marketing alignment meeting, who wants to go to that? Or if you have a pipeline review meeting, well, again, everybody is on an edge with extra cup of coffee coming to that meeting. But if you had a go-to-market meeting, now we're saying, hey, we're trying to move the business forward because every decision, like Eric, you mentioned about signals and insights, like you mentioned, Nadia, all of that is ultimately helping you make a go-to-market decision around, should we do more? Should we do a small event now for this group over here, as opposed to this big event? Or should we do focused on this ICP or not? It's really helping you make go-to-market decisions. And anybody, any technology, any platform, any service that can help people make go-to-market decisions better, I think is going to win at the end of the day.
Yeah, they're huge.
I loved what Eric said, that the first step towards the light at the end of the tunnel has to be the acceptance that you're dealing with imperfect data and finding that level of comfort. Yeah. It's almost like going through 5 stages of grief, right? You're in denial, looking for the next shiny tool, and there's a lot of MarTech vendors ready to sell you something that's going to be it, right? Yeah. And then you finally accept it. And you bring all of the members of the go-to-market team saying, what can we do together to address this? And let's figure out what the definitions are, what is what, and work together towards it. I love that.
Nadia, you should create a graphic on that and put it on. I think it would be pretty wild. It is 5 stages of grief from a buyer, from a seller and buyer marketing perspective. When a buyer looks at certain thing and they're gonna buy, that's a great signal, and they don't, and you're like, you go through that grief. I think you're onto something. That's so true.
You might have inspired me, because we just released the State of Marketing Attribution Report.
Yeah.
And the inspiration there was the periodic table. And that was the periodic table of revenue marketing with each one of the blocks. And we made sure we used exactly the same number of elements, because there's a lot of elements in marketing. You don't abbreviate that. Having a place and the channels and the tactics and the KPIs, everything. So I guess my next one will be 5 stages of grief. You never know. You just inspired me.
Go for it.
All right. So since we mentioned AI, we might as well talk a little bit about AI, right? And everybody talks about this, Gartner hype cycle. We passed the trough of disillusionment. Some of us may still be there. We're onto the plateau of productivity. Some of us are, some of us are not. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of misconceptions that, the entrance of AI into the go-to-market motion is the panacea. It's going to solve everything that you could not solve for before. You couldn't do SEO before? Solved. Couldn't do analytics before? Well, this thing will do it. Couldn't find the answers to the next content strategy? Well, you'll get it from there. But I feel like the nature of marketing and the questions that we need to answer, the same as 5 years ago, 4 years ago, when you wrote the book, Sangram, versus today, they're the same. So how do we think about this framework and this new reality of AI everything? Is it the same? Do we need to adapt? Like, give me some of your thoughts on all of this.
Yeah, I think I'm working on a deck that we'll be presenting at Inbound. And one of the things that we're focused on as part of the research was, what's the future of work look like in the terms of the world that we all live in? And we believe, based on all the research, that the future of work is workflows. And everything is going to be a workflow of some sort that you're trying to figure out. And what AI, at the end of the day, today, we believe it's almost in the Stone Age. 3 months from 6 months from now, Nadia, we would be joking around like, did you know we actually thought that was cool? Like, that was so dumb. All we did was take a transcript and then that, created a blog article. Like, we look at that as dumb already. So 6 months from now, whatever we're doing is going to look like it's so rudimentary and Stone Age oriented. So I think we're in a very, very early stage. And everything that we're doing almost feels like it has to have a near perfect data in order for it to create the best thing. So there are elements of it. There is tremendous amount of value that can be created on it, but there's way more to be created and to be seen right now. And I think folks like you guys are in it, because that's the part. The biggest idea, though, that I feel that is true, and it's never been true before, is that, when we go to an event and we say, hey, we can only follow up on the top accounts. Why? Because we only had so much bandwidth. I think because of AI, no lead should ever be left behind. No follow-up should never be done. The amount of time to respond to somebody should never take 3 days or 4 days anymore. So AI can absolutely and should be used to make sure that there is nothing left behind. Now, is it perfect? Is it the best? All that's a different story. But we all have spent decades making sure that we only focused on a certain number of folks to follow up on, because that's all the bandwidth we had. AI has taken the bandwidth question completely off the table. There is no bandwidth question anymore. So the question really becomes, can it be customized enough? Can it be personalized enough? Could be valuable enough? Could be right enough? And that is yet to be seen. And every day there's something new happening.
So I like this idea of fine-tooth comb and kind of going through everything, making sure you're turning every rock, which the ability you didn't have before. So Eric, I feel like that's super relevant in the world of marketing analytics, because like you said, marketing data is just so voluminous. Like, you can never run enough regression analyses and, ANOVA tables to figure out everything and bring it all together.
Yeah.
It helps with insights. So, how do you think about this added value of being able to utilize AI by people who understand data and people who do not understand data necessarily in depth, right?
Yeah.
This kind of new day of GTM.
Well, first I'll start with, again, marketing data tends to be, from a data science term, a very sparse data, right? It tends to be very thin. There tends to be signal in there, but you have to really kind of extract the signal from all of the noise. Again, it's interesting to see a whole bunch of people on your website. It's way more interesting if you know who those people are, and if they're ICP, ACP, or whatever, right? If they're ideal or acceptable or whatever from a targeting perspective. So that's really important, is to realize that your data is sparse. So now you can apply machine learning, analytics, good data science techniques and data pipeline techniques to take sparse data and turn it into something that's usable. I think the first step that most marketing organizations need to realize is they have to get their data they have to get a single source of truth around their data. That means they have to put all their data in one place. Then they have to go through the hard work of scrubbing it and deduping it and stitching it and then enriching it and get it. So then, because unless you have a good data set, there's nothing to do AI on. Like if I just take all that raw data and feed it into an AI engine, it's going to tell me a lot of things, because that's what they do. They just predict and they'll tell you a lot of stuff. Very few of those things will be right. It's just going to make up a lot of stuff about that data, and so you have to get your data accurate first. Now, once you've got good data, suddenly that opens up all these options for you with AI and engines and things like that. What I see is it's interesting is, we work with machine learning models, which are very, algorithmic, math heavy. And we work with large language models, which are very different beast. Machine learning creates more data. That's really what it does, is it takes data in and it makes more data that's essentially trying to synthesize this stuff down into signal that you can then take action on. Large language models are very, very different, right? There are things that you can ask questions of. What I really view them as, they're a great way for people who are not data scientists to ask really good questions and then have the large language model turn that into something that can then be fed into your system so you can get a good answer out. So it allows individuals that have really good questions that they need to get out of the data, but aren't data scientists, to ask those questions in a way that's natural to them and still get a good answer out, right? And that's where we're seeing the real power, is that when you blend good data with large language models, really as almost like the interface to individuals and users, we're starting to see very powerful outcomes. I'll give you an example. I was on with one of the SVP of operations from a customer like Friday last week, and we were in our system, and he's like, I've been trying to tell the management team that these events are really powerful for us. And then I'm like, well, let's go into the system and ask them a few questions. We asked a few questions and we pulled together some data, and suddenly we had a chart that was like, he's like, oh, wow, that's exactly what I've been looking for, right? But it took the bridging of the question to the data to be able to get to an answer that he can then now use with the rest of his executive team to kind of show what's going on. But it took the large language model to be able to kind of interpret what he was asking in a way that the computer could really understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, Eric, I'm curious, do you see a future where people are pretty much not logging into systems as much, but are actually just chatting with a system or a set of systems that integrates with all these different things, so it can pull up what you're talking about at the end of the day?
I'm seeing, it depends. Yes, I think that's going to be a way that people interact with their data. The challenge you get into, especially in large enterprises, is what data can people really access? So if you put all your data in this thing and then you put this generic chat thing on the front and you give it to everybody, suddenly everybody has access to all the data.
Yeah.
And then is it really giving good responses? Is it giving accurate responses? And if there's not people in there helping to make sure that things are staying on track, they may be getting very confident answers that are wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And so I see a few things developing. I see more of like these things being used as interfaces to access data, but still a fair amount of controls and processes in the background that's checking the data, making sure the data is good, that's building these things up. You still need data lineage. You need to be able to understand where the data is coming from, and is it accurate? Is it going off the rails? And you really still need a lot of data controls. Who should have access to this information? And what I've seen is a lot of companies come out with like, boom, you can ask all these questions, do all these things. That's awesome. But do you want every BDR having access to your entire pipeline data across your entire business?
Yeah.
Is that really appropriate in a large enterprise?
Yeah.
Right. So you need to have those controls in place in addition to, so it's opening up capability, but it's also causing a lot of security issues in the back end that you need to really think through.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up a really good point. We see that because you have a lot of PE firm oriented companies, and then also much bigger enterprise companies. And when we do the advisory, everybody wants to use elements of AI, and everybody wants to find an easier way, and everybody wants access to stuff without asking 10 people to get basic information like, what does my pipeline look like in this territory or in Q3? Or, it sounds like there are there are scenarios that a certain group of people should be able to ask and get answers on it at 2 a.m. in the morning, if that's European time, if that's what works for somebody. And it feels like that's the future in elements of it, but it's not perfect. It's not. There is a really good chance that they will get bad answers and they could make decisions based on those, and that's when it will be worse than waiting another day.
Yeah, and so so we've taken an approach where we have people more like the marketing ops teams and the data analysts. They can ask those questions, they can build things, but they're actually then building something that's like a dashboard or report that they then give to those people. But they can then be like, okay, they can validate it. It's sort of that person in the middle where they're like, okay, this looks right. This is the data. It's appropriate for this group. I'm filtering it down because does my EMEA team really need to see what's going on in APAC? Right. So you're filtering it down, but we're making it so easy for them to be able to ask those questions and build things that they can then, but they still have those controls around it when they send it out to the business.
Well, Salesforce knew something when they created permission sets, right? Just a little bit. That brings us to the question of this, the concept of data democratization. And I feel like such a contrarian now, because for years working for different SaaS companies, democratization is such a big word. You want to put it on your website, you want to democratize everything for everyone. It's just anybody needs access to things, right? But Eric was talking about something that I hear more and more. It could be dangerous if you put sensitive data, if you put actionable data in the hands of those who cannot interpret it in the way that you need to interpret it and then act on it. So then you have to backpedal and figure out how do you kind of bring the control back. And I don't know if that's something that you guys think about, like this idea of data democratization being a little bit of overinflated, overhyped, and in reality, we need to have responsible data stewards who can help people and aid them to understand what they've been looking at. Just curious.
We see this, one of the most common issues, and I think Eric brought up early on, and I was at Salesforce, so I'll tell you from just firsthand, Salesforce themselves would say that their data is not clean, because it's hard. It's hard to keep the data clean and keep it updated and keep it normalized and all those kind of things. As a result of it, all this stuff feels like they're accelerating worse behavior faster in certain areas. So if you don't have the right information, you could make very quick decisions and go in a wrong direction much faster now than ever before. And not much thought has been given to it because everybody's doing this in their silos, right? The sales team is doing their own thing on silos, marketing is doing their own thing. And I think there is going to be needing, that's what we're seeing, this rise of go-to-market operations as a much bigger function that's starting to develop. Whereas the RevOps function was, for the most part, unfortunately, became a sales ops person with a glorified title a lot of times, or they were responsible for tooling as opposed to insights and decision-making around where the business needs to go. Whereas go-to-market operations, as we see the new, it may be the same people, but they now have a much clearer strategic responsibility, almost fiduciary responsibility for the business to help company make the right decisions in the right way. But it really, Eric, I think you're spot on the money. I think there needs to be a person in the loop in order for some of these things to happen. And there needs to be flagging. I think none of these systems are made for a global use where all the data could be immediately normalized into it. You can dump a lot of stuff and you can get a lot of crap. We have proven all of that stuff, but nobody wants to say with a fine line, this could be wrong. You can make it says that every single time. So nobody has cracked the code on it, but I feel like the future is going in the direction where you want to have some version of it. But before you make any decision, you need to have somebody verify that, or some process or system to verify that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. There's the data stewardship issue is real as these large language models start to be given access to huge amounts of data, whether it's through RAG architectures or directly to databases or whatever. They're being leveraged to make decisions but it's unclear that they really know if the decision is right for the business, right? And so I think we're already starting to see diminishing returns with GPT-5 being released this week. Where these models are starting to cap out. We're starting to get, I think personally, a view of this is where they're probably going to end up for the next 5 to 10 years and what they're going to be able to do. They're going to start to get incrementally better. I heard somebody say, we're sort of in the the iPhone phase where we've gone for where every version of the iPhone was like, wow, now I have a camera on it and now I can, do this, to like, hey, I just got a new version and my camera's got 4 more pixels on the sides.
Still the same phone.
It's still the same phone. And so we're starting to see that. Others may disagree, but I think we're starting to see where that bar is.
Wow.
And which is actually a good thing for industries and businesses, because that allows us to now target like, okay, here's what the capability set is really going to kind of focus on. Now, how do we build this into enterprise applications in a way that's going to be sustainable, that's going to be, it's going to have high security built into it, and it's not going to cause the issues you were talking about, where it's suddenly making decisions or allowing people to make decisions faster, but wrong.
Yeah. Oh man, I've never heard that, but it makes perfect sense, because everybody is almost getting ready, hurrying up, and then pausing because they just don't know what the next thing would be.
They don't know what the next thing is going to be, right? Yeah, right. And if AGI is going to come out in 3 weeks, why am I building this huge agentic infrastructure, right?
Yeah. So
but I think we're all starting to get a pretty good view, especially like I said with the release, was it yesterday, this week, last week of GPT-5?
Yeah.
We're getting a good view of where I think we're going to land on this stuff.
Yeah. It also is helping me. I wrote down about just the maturity, as a society, as a community, as a enterprise, global, we cannot mature unless there are baselines established around certain things. It's just not possible. If every day we're going to see a new thing that could completely change the way we think, then you can mature. You just are waiting expectantly for the world to change, and then you're like, whoa, this is great.
Everybody's paralyzed with like what's coming next and how do I build, and I don't want to invest now because it may change all in a week or two.
Right? The best level of maturity in a similar way we have written in the book of like problem, product, platform in an AI world, and you're making me think about this, Eric, is it would be like, all right, this is where the base level thing, everybody got to be able to use the AI and do their job better, like 30%, 40% better and faster and all that kind of stuff. The next level is for, okay, now you want to be able to build on top of it that exposes a lot of things, and there is security and elements and decision making, and maybe there's another layer that yet to be seen what it could do. And that's not just deep research and stuff, that's actually what can it do. An example of this one was we were working with a client that has 3,000 customers, and an idea of that, can your product create another product? So when you think about it, you have a product, they have 3,000 customers, and now they have put a script in there, which essentially looks at whatever is the user behavior inside the product. And now you can, with AI, you can do that across 3. You don't have to wonder about how are my customers using, or just heat map of 1 or 2 things. You actually can literally monitor the behavior. And one of the things that came out was, almost 80% of the people who are super users, they download this particular file, and they do X, Y, and Z things with it. So now they're running a loop around like, well, that's a great product insight that we wouldn't have got if we wouldn't have been able to see across 3,000 customers without asking those 10 top people those questions. And now they're like, that can create a new product. So can we test it out? And so that's to me is the third layer, where can your product essentially give you another way of consumer behavior, just like in a B2C world, to say what else can we create and what else could we sell and what else are they doing that we have no understanding and knowledge of.
Right. Yeah, super interesting.
The stat that stood out to me that's along those lines in terms of who brings this AI adoption initiative within the organization. Because when you think about marketing, I feel like we're so close to all things AI because we're always short on money. We're always short on resources. We're always short on ideation and creativity. But what if we did 5 of these or 10 of these, right? So it's like the marketing leader is the one who adopts AI. The team adopts AI Other teams may not. Your sales team, your customer success team, they don't have that pressing need to do it as fast as marketing does. So Invoca released a number saying that 37% of organizations see their head of marketing as the person who brings AI adoption, right? And that takes me to the question that I'm curious how you guys would answer it. To be able to roll out adoption of something which is very technical, has multiple layers, requires savviness in technology and understanding of data so that you could educate people, tell them what not to do and what to do. Not every marketing leader has that background. So as we think about people who came up through brand and product marketing and those kind of things, how do you see, like the areas of upskilling, of focus, or even restructuring of the team to bring people that would help marketing leaders, whether it's functional leader or the leader of the organization, to deal with all of that and be responsible with AI adoption?
Yeah. Eric, you want to take it first?
Well, that's a really interesting, it's a pretty deep question. First of all, I think you need to take a couple of steps. One is that you have to allow your organization to start to actually use and play around with these tools and capabilities. But you have to do it in a way that's sort of sandboxed and safe, right? So we're going through this. I can't tell you how many AI addendums I'm currently reviewing from all of our customers as they want to turn on our AI capabilities, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because like the machine learning stuff, the predictive analysis of none of this triggered this level of pushback. With the large language models, man, these companies have been, boom, lock it down. Now let's open it up. What we are seeing though is this recognition, a lot of these companies, that if we don't start to use these tools and leverage them, we may fall so far behind our competition that we may not be able to recover. So we are seeing pressure and impetus to actually leverage these things. Now, what they want is they want all of their vendors to essentially absolve them of all risk around these things, which is never going to happen, right? But they are starting to open up. So I would say that the first step is that these organizations need to allow teams to have access to these tools to play around with them. The second thing is that you need to find ways of linking these tools to your data in a way that you can actually start to leverage that and explore how it can impact your business, right? Because every business is different. At the end of the day, what you're really looking for is you're looking for these AI engines to either help your teams go faster, right? Achieve higher results, better quality and whatever, right? Or help automate things for you, along the way. And so you won't know that until you start to explore what their capabilities are, how it meshes with your business and your business processes, and then how does it integrate with your internal data. And I'll be honest, that's where almost every enterprise company I've seen is stuck right now. Wow. Hey, I can give my people access to Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, but I don't know how to access the data. That's why, I'll be honest, you're seeing such an acceleration of this having an effect in the coding space.
Yeah.
Because it was very easy to tie that directly to the business process. Code, this thing can help me build code. Code is what I do. That's my business process. This thing can help me do it. Boom, is almost an immediate uplift in speed. Maybe not quality, but definitely speed.
Yeah.
Right? And broadening out. Companies are having a lot harder time matching that into the rest of their business. Yeah. And that's what they're really playing with. I think marketing can be in a good space, because like coding, it can be used to help with creative aspects, emails, content, all of these things. It can almost immediately apply into there. So they get to experiment with this in different areas of their business. And then if they've got all this data, they can start to apply it to the data and start to try to figure out, how does it help me make decisions around this data, this information?
Yeah, man, I love the direction you took this conversation. I wrote down, as Nadia was asking, is marketing happens to be the most strategic team player, and not because other people are not thinkers and can do it, but for the most part, marketing is brought in for every good and bad in the company. Oh, we got a churn problem, marketing, go create something for it. Oh, we got a pipeline problem, marketing, what are you doing? You can't go run an event.
Stop, I'm gonna start crying. You cannot say that.
Right, and then on top of that, if it's not to salt your wound, Nadia, and I've been a CMO before becoming CEO, so I believe it. As everybody got an opinion on marketing, so that too is just adding to it. So marketing has a vested interest in making sure that they are able to move things faster, respond quicker. And Eric, what you brought, that's a great parallel with coding. Marketing does play a role almost in every go-to-market function strategically. So they can very quickly, we need more customer stories to close these type of deals in enterprise. Let me run something, and they would have the time, the knowledge, they need the process to do it. They can just hire 20 people to do it. So AI is a natural place. Now, I look at marketing as a facilitator of this, not an owner. And there's a big distinction on that thing. Just like in our book, in the research, we asked every single CEO, every single PE firm that we talked to, like over 100. And across the board, when we asked who owns go-to-market, it was very clear. Every CEO said, I own go-to-market, because that's business. That we're going to spend more in marketing or sales. That's a go-to-market decision. You're going to go in EMEA or North America. That's a go-to-market decision. It's not just product launch or campaign. Go-to-market is the business. So CEOs, for the most part, almost everyone from a publicly traded companies like Brian Halligan at HubSpot to a startup company, understood that part. Whereas same thing I think is true with AI. I don't know what the ownership. That's a really interesting question, Nadia. I don't know where would it land, but I think the best facilitator at the end of the day would be the marketing person, seems like, because they just have a vested interest and they are called to solve multiple problems every single day.
That's good news, because we're going to have another C title, Chief AI Officer. So the career growth for marketing and for marketing ops has just expanded.
Yeah.
This is good news.
Well, it's almost, it could backfire, because it will almost be back in the day where we have to go to IT to send an email. You remember those days? So it's like, it could literally go back and like, hey, I have to run this prompt, and I have to go to a chief AI officer to ask if I can do that or not. So we have to be careful how far this goes.
For sure. So last question as we wrap up. Out of everything that we talked about, if we think about one area that we want to advise people that are listening to this to focus on as we go into the end of the year, this is the most ambitious quarter, the hardest quarter, or the party quarter. All the events are happening everywhere in Q4, right? Like however we want to call it. What's your advice? Like the one thing that marketing leaders need to focus on? Sangram, for you, that could be something from the MOVE framework. Eric, for you, it could be anything that, CaliberMind touches. So let's start with Eric. What's the one area you would advise people to focus on?
Well, I mean, you got to start taking your data seriously. You got to figure out how to centralize, like whether or not you're using a product like CaliberMind or you're building your own marketing data warehouse or you're doing something, you really need to start to think about your data as a true asset, and also the foundation for what you're going to build all of these new kind of AI frameworks on top of. These AI frameworks aren't going to work if they don't have good data to run on top of. And marketing, from a go-to-market perspective, marketing has the buyer journey information. They have all the touch points that show how your customers, how your prospects are behaving. And if you want to do anything with AI related to that, you've got to get that data in shape.
I love it. As said, I think we have it in the book. If not, I made up afterwards. So, we'll have to live with that. I think for too long, marketers have focused on marketing the business. And I think it's important if you're a marketer, to understand what is the business of marketing. It's not just a play on words. It's really a mindset shift. Marketing the business could mean that you're great at content writing, you're great at events, whatever the thing is, that you have many of options that you do. That's marketing the business, and there is absolutely good need for it. But once you understand the business of marketing, like why you do what you do, to ask the question like we talked about, so what? Or like where can you grow the most? Like all of these requires the understanding of business of marketing. And to me, it's the greatest time to be a marketer. Like it's a playground to be an incredible marketer, to do all the things we get to do. This is going to look upon as a golden era for us in some ways. So in that sense, but if you don't understand the business of marketing, Go and ask, what are the right metrics? What moves the business needle, so I can focus and align all the things I do to those top 2 or 3 metrics that actually matter to my business. And then maybe it makes sense for me to run more events. Maybe it makes sense to create more content. Maybe it does not, and you have to figure out how can you do that part of business of marketing.
I'm glad that we're still retaining some common sense and indexing on it with the world of AI making decisions for us. But I love that optimistic note. You hear on the street that marketers are about to get laid off because AI will replace them. And here it's more focused on what matters, because at the end of the day, people make businesses, not technology, right? So with this, I thank you both so much. This was a great conversation. I personally learned a thing or two. I'm sure our audience loved it. So thank you so much. And we'll continue these conversations as we go through the season.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was fantastic, Nadia and Eric.
Thanks. Sangram, great talking to you.
Yeah.